Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about the floor press and some of the reasons that I like this exercise. So with the floor press, you guys will notice that, the majority of my lifters can pretty well touch their chest or get very, very close to it. You'll get people who will see the floor press and say, oh, it's just a partial. Well, if it's a partial for you guys, you need to really thicken your backs up. Right? If the bar is 6 or 8 inches above your chest when your triceps touch the floor, there's a problem. Right? There's a problem. You need to get a lot thicker. Right? You need to get a lot thicker. And it generally means that you have a pretty small back if that's the case. And that's almost always the case if that's what's going on. So in my case, I have really long arms. Doing it close grip, you guys still see what happens because I'm pretty thick. So we need to lose this idea that people are doing it because it's a partial, because most strong lifters are not. And the other thing to think about with the floor press, while we're on that topic, most of the research on partials, when we talk about range of motion and hypertrophy, we're usually comparing things like half reps, right? We're comparing things like half reps to full range of motion because the research doesn't generally always show that adding 2 inches to a range of motion on a long movement really significantly matters. So in this case, that's not really what we're looking at. But you guys can see most of my lifters, we get real close to the chest. Right? We get pretty close to the chest on these. So if that's what people are thinking, oh, it's a tricep exercise because it's partial like a board press or something, but it may not be. Right? It may not be. And the tension and the work of the pecs and stuff in some cases can be even higher on a floor press than it is on a bench press. Okay, so what are we doing with it? Well, a couple things we're doing. We are limiting the range of motion based on skeletal structure to some extent because you're going to be limited at the bottom by where your triceps touch. They're not going to come down behind you. Or they're not going to come back down behind you. So what this means from a shoulder health perspective is that a lot of times the floor press can be a little easier on the shoulders because of that hard terminal stop that we have. So for some people, a deeper stretch on the chest, particularly people with certain types of shoulder issues, can be an issue, right? It can be an issue. But when we limit it there, the floor press allows us to do this safer. The other thing is, I've had people who can only do a floor press with a football bar. I had a client years ago, a couple years back, 2-3 years ago at this point. He was doing like Navy search and rescue. He was active duty at the time. His shoulders were really, really beat up from what he did. Like he had impingements in both shoulders and he couldn't bench at all pain-free. But he was able to do this exercise and we used it to rehab his shoulders. He could still do heavy pressing with a football bar on a floor press. The bar stopping, just like 1 to 2 inches from his chest. He could do it pain-free. He eventually, as he rehabbed things, got to where he could bench, well over 315 with a correct bench press over time. Okay, but this exercise, when you see Emma doing there, it's what he was able to do. So one of the other things that we get from the floor press is the fact that we lose leg drive. We lose inertia. Even if you just barely touch and go it like my guys are doing, what happens? You're still losing leg drive. You're still losing the inertia. You're still losing a bounce. It's not like a touch and go because most people when they're touching and going, they're still bouncing off the chest. They think, oh, I'm only getting 5 pounds, or they might be getting 30 pounds out of it because they are bouncing. Okay, in the case of the floor press, we remove, number one, the ability to bounce at all. Because if you try to bounce off the floor hard and use any real bouncing, it hurts. It hurts your elbows when they hit the ground. You'll hurt yourself. It teaches you to control it. Also teaches you to control the eccentric rep, right? This movement requires more control. Noticed when Michelle did that there, she tapped a little hard. She wasn't comfortable with that. It's like, ow, that hurts. you know. It teaches you control. It removes the ability to bounce. So even if you do rarely do a soft touch and go, you're having to use your pecs and delts and everything to get the weight started. There's no way to cheat with bouncing. You can't really use leg drive to get it off the bottom. Even if you got your feet down like I'm doing and you do just a little bit of leg movement, it's your sticking point, which does happen very, very frequently. Guess what? We're still not using a leg drive to get it started. Hey, we're not using it to get it started. Therefore, if we start thinking in terms of mechanical tension, where's the tension the highest? Down at the bottom. We can't use any bounce or leg drive. We create more mechanical tension closer to the lengthening position of the muscle, right? And that's where the hypertrophy is the strongest on the lengthening. Even in the case of this, if we're losing an inch or two, over the really long range of motion of a normal bench press, then it may not be significant. We're still getting probably a higher mechanical tension at that point because we're having to use those muscles to get it started, right? It is a builder of brute strength. It is a tester of brute strength, right? When you start testing maxes with floor pressing, what does this tell us? It tells us how brutally strong you are, because you're having to do this from a dead stop. It's no longer the full body exercise that a bench press can be. We can't use leg drive, right? We can't use all these other tools that we might use to get the weight started. It's pure brute strength. So if we're looking at building muscle in those fibers that strengthen us out of the bottom, the floor press works great. And that's the beauty of it, is that it forces us to use the muscles. Even if we're doing a partial with it because we are smaller, we're having to do it from a dead stop. So we still might be kind of recruiting hard from the point where the leg drive gets us to. Right, we're still having to use muscles to push ourselves, the primary movers, to push that bar, to push that weight through, a sticking point. So therefore, when we look at that and the tensions involved mechanically, this brings a lot to the table. It brings a lot to the table. Better potential hypertrophy in some cases, due to that muscle activation, teaches you to learn to stay tight, teaches you to learn to explode, to build explosive strength from a dead stop. Because that dead stop part is there no matter what you do. Even if you do a soft touch, you're still forced to get it started. There's no way to technique it up. Right? We can't use that same technique to drive it up. It's all brute strength. You get good at floor pressing and then you learn to add that leg drive and stuff back in on the bench, then we get real strong real fast. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.